Hello, everybody. Jim Marty here for the Deadhead Cannabis Show. We're ready to broadcast another weekly podcast about our adventures of being on the road and attending Grateful Dead and Phish shows, and also talk about some of the social aspects of legalized marijuana.
How are you today, Jim?
Excellent.
Well, good. It's Larry Mishkin here calling in, and I'm on my way to a Phish show. We can talk about that later, but I think what everybody's waiting to hear from the keys you gave us last week from the barn is what's going on. How were the shows at Folsom Field? I heard you had a little weather issue there one night.
Yeah, we had a 1 hour rain delay. Crazy Colorado weather. Seemed like there was a cloud that came in right over the stadium. They opened up with Not Fade Away, so once again moving a second set closer to an opener, as they did at Wrigley or Larry.
That's great. I love it when they do that.
But for better or worse, due to adverse weather, they actually moved the set break to the beginning of the show, too. Yeah, the second song was Cold Rain and Snow. In the middle of cold rain and snow, Bob looks up at the sky and says, "We're going to be taking a short break due to inclement weather." And the band got off the stage, and they came over the PA and said, "Please take shelter." The rain came down in buckets. The lightning was all around the stadium. Myself and about, 30 or 40,000 other people crowded into what's called the Field House. And the Field House is an athletic building that's connected to Folsom Stadium, and it's big enough to have an indoor track. So it's a big building. And as big as that building was, it was still shoulder to shoulder in that building. But the good news was that in spite of the cold rain and eventually hail, the beer vendors kept selling beer, so no one's slowing them down. And it was pretty much a full 1 hour break for the weather. And so they start up again after an hour break. The sun came out. The weather was fine after that. But they came out and they finished. They started right in the middle where they left off on Cold Rain and Snow and finished Cold Rain and Snow, and the whole stadium just broke up in laughter.
They literally, they picked up right in the middle of the song?
Yeah, right in the middle of Cold Rain and Snow. So the band has a very good sense of humor.
Yeah, they did that in Chicago, too, once.
I was going to say, then Bob comes to the microphone. It was kind of like when you're on an airplane and the pilot comes on and says, "We're going to try to make up a little of the lost time for you." So Bob comes up to the microphone and says, "We're going to try to make up a little bit of time for you folks here tonight, and we're just going to play straight through." And they did. They played the 3 hour show straight through. And it was really a great, great show. You got to listen to the Box of Rain. The I Know You Rider was on fire. They did a China Cat Rider. And the jams in between the verses of Rider, they just broke into this tight little Nashville jam. And it was so tight on tight. And it's just a wonderful show. And I had a great time. And then the second night was a solid performance as well. We got a Terrapin. We got a Eyes of the World, and wonderful set list. If you check out the set list for both nights, it was just solid, good old Grateful Dead music, lots of classics. We got a Box of Rain, which I remember I predicted Box of Rain last Saturday in my barn.
Okay, so, Jim, here's my question, and this is the question on everybody's mind. Who sang Box of Rain?
That Bob and John both sang it together.
So my take on that is, kind of ballsy, don't you think, to play Phil's signature song without him on stage? But on the other hand, I love that they're doing it.
Yeah. No, I think that I don't think there's any kind of tension like that. I think they all want to have their songs played and sung. There's plenty of Garcia Hunter songs that Dead Co does as well.
I get frustrated because I think that he spends too much time on Jerry's tunes, and Bobby's just full of it. Just once, I would love to see him play a complete weather report suite. Just do that, and the crowd will go wild. Yeah.
You mean with the long intro?
Yeah, of course. Absolutely. It would be awesome. Yeah. We caught a really good J-Rad show last night out on Northerly Island, which is just off the coast, off the shore of Lake Michigan. You have a view back with the skyline of the city, and they came out and they really, really put on a great show. And, I think they are definitely establishing themselves as the go-to Dead cover band that's out there right now.
I love J-Rad. I love the way the drums are out front.
Right. And last night he had the drummer from Wilco, Hotchkiss, I forget his first name, because Wilco's a Chicago group. He came out, talk about out of order. They did a first set drum solo, and this guy was sitting there drumming with Joe Russo. They readjusted his kit so there would be room for this guy to sit there with him and drum and stay until the end of the first set. And it was fun. It was really, really good. It came out in the second set. They really smoked. We had a beautiful night. It was a lot of fun.
Excellent. Excellent. I love J-Rad. He'll be playing Red Rocks here in August.
Worth seeing, no doubt.
And that big drum set sounds so good at Red Rocks. It's just thunder coming off the stage.
Absolutely.
Let's talk a little bit about last week's show and your impressions of my friend Duke Rumbly and his comments on some of the social aspects. I guess one of the takeaways I had from his comments were that some of the concerns about young people, teenagers, smoking the concentrated products.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that, Jim, because that's exactly what I want to talk about. We're at an interesting point in time right now, right, where the product keeps getting stronger and stronger and stronger, and there's definitely a market for that. But, when you talk about teenagers, and right, we've said this before, nobody advocates underage smoking and anything like that, but as a practical matter, it happens. But the stuff that the kids are getting access to these days is frighteningly strong. And when you combine that with the studies, and Duke even mentioned it, that talk about the effects on the developing brain up until the age of 25, it kind of puts the industry in an interesting position, right? Where on the one hand, it wants to give its customers what they want. But on the other hand, the goal is to have a little bit of flexibility in there so that we're not, getting everybody so stoned they can't see straight.
Right. The dabs and the concentrates can be very strong. And I think it's a scientific fact that the human brain is not fully developed until age 25. And you can see a personality change in young people. My son's friends, who, were great 8th and 9th graders, and then they really get into marijuana, and they start kind of talking like this, man.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Well, and, here's a...
So, yeah.
We have proof of that, too, right? If you ever try and go rent a car, I think you have to be 25 years old for a rental car company to rent you a car. And when you get your car insurance, and I know this because I've gone through it with 3 boys, when you're 16, 17, 18 years old, your insurance rates are off the charts. And finally, when you hit the age of 25 or 26, they come back down and they're normal again. Right.
Now, the good news that I have, having something crossed my computer screen this week, is that, and I think I might have shared it with you, that the states with legal marijuana are actually seeing declining teenage use.
Yes.
And one of the reasons for that is it's more difficult to buy marijuana. When you go into a dispensary in Colorado, you have to show your ID when you go in the door, and you show it again at the cash register.
Yep.
So, and the state of Colorado runs sting operations just like they do on alcohol.
Yep.
So the dispensaries are rock solid. They do not sell to anybody without a valid ID and the proper age. And it has put the drug dealers out of business. I have friends of mine who sold marijuana for decades. And they said, man, this legal thing, it really screwed everything up. I used to get $400 an ounce and never filed a tax return. Life was great. Now I can't sell any marijuana because you can buy a $6 joint at the dispensary.
Right. Well, that's, I guess, the downside for some people of the direction that we're moving. But for the rest of us, it's all good. But I totally understand that, and I get that, and I agree that that's certainly a factor. I think there's probably also a factor that teenage boys have never been too keen on doing anything that their moms enjoy doing as well. So you probably have a little bit of a balance with that. But I think it's really imperative on the industry, and I talk with my clients about this all the time, that, rather than just advertising, hey, we've got stuff at, 99% or 98% THC, that there's nothing wrong with, promoting the lower THC level product and, really making a point, I think, of letting people know. So we don't all have to go in, to the grocery store and buy, what was it called, Everclear, right? The highest ranked proof alcohol there is. And hopefully we'll develop something similar with marijuana and THC, where it'll be more based on the taste and everything else, and people won't feel a need to max out on that THC level.
Right. And as Duke correctly pointed out, there are people in this world who do not have the stop button, and that might be true for marijuana, and it's also true for alcohol. I don't think it's good to drink alcohol all day, and I don't think it's especially good to be smoking one joint after another all day long either.
Well, I agree with that too.
As much as the
moderation is
as
key.
much as the product is loved, It really turns off employers when their employees are heavy users.
Yes. Oh, for sure.
So anyway, but I thought Duke made some great points, and he had some great stories to tell about how he came to sobriety. And I really enjoyed our talks about the Wharf Rats and what a great organization they are. So, well, that wraps up last week, but go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say again, and I can't really say enough about Wharf Rats. For me, going to the whole Dead scene and, being exposed to it and everything that went on there, and the idea that, as far back as the 1980s, the Deadheads themselves were finding ways to go and enjoy the show without feeling the social pressure and giving themselves a way to avoid the social pressure, of having to be intoxicated. And it's a tremendous thing, right? It's worked out really well, and I think it speaks volumes to these communities and Phish and Grateful Dead that while people certainly enjoy the things they enjoy, they also, they're also smart about it. And the people who know they need to take a break, and there's groups that'll support them doing it.
Yes. I'll never forget the first time I was at Red Rocks, might have been a Widespread Panic show. And at set break, I saw the Wharf Rats all holding hands and reciting the prayer to St. Francis.
Mm-hmm.
I forget exactly how that goes, but give me the strength, something like that.
Yep, exactly.
One day at a time.
Right.
So anyway.
That's great.
But yeah, that's all been great. Now, musically, we're going to move on to talk something about Bob Weir, this podcast.
Correct. And that's where we're. Before we do that, and this will just take a second, I do have to say, and actually I'm encouraged by this because it means we've got people listening. I got some feedback from some Deadheads last week when we were talking about Phil. And one of the things that they said was we forgot to mention how gifted he was musically, how he wrote, symphony pieces that were performed by the Vienna Philharmonic, and the classical music that he was able to compose, and that and then all of a sudden he gave that up to become a psychedelic rocker who at 80 years old is still going strong. So to my Deadhead friends out there who were kind enough to both be listening and point that out to me, thank you, point made. Phil is a tremendous musical talent. But I think it's time to move on to Bob Weir. Give me your thoughts first, Jim.
So, yeah, just one quick comment on Phil. Yeah, so much of the, I call it rock and roll symphonies, when they're wound up in a terrapin, a weather report suite, it's more than just a song. It's like a classical piece of music.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so moving on and talking about Bob, I've been thinking about what to say because I've enjoyed seeing Bob Weir since 1979.
Yep.
It was my first Grateful Dead show. There's a wonderful documentary out there about Bob called The Other One. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's very, very good.
It does. It tells a good story.
And Bob goes to a Robert Hunter show and interviews him backstage.
Right.
It's a really cool documentary.
Yes.
And a lot of people talk about how his guitar playing, it really does not stand out in the mix, either with the Grateful Dead or Dead and Company. But if he wasn't there, you would miss it. And he kind of fills in the middle. So he's not playing the big single notes like John Mayer is right now, where John Mayer's filling the stadium with a single guitar note. But he's in the middle, and he's filling it in. Your comments?
That's interesting that you say that. For me, Bob Weir has always been the goofy guy, right? And the role that he filled in the Grateful Dead was, in my opinion, not that they all didn't have important roles, but, just as important in Jerry. He was the yin to Jerry's yang. And, right, Jerry was the kind of the stoic, psychedelic rocker who was up there, and Bobby was playing to the crowd and, kind of the teeny boppers almost. And, sometimes it would almost be annoying, but yet at the same time, it wouldn't be them without him. Sugar Magnolia is my favorite Grateful Dead song. He fills in so much. And the truth is, I was actually listening to the Grateful Dead station on Sunday when they do that Golden Road show. And those guys were talking about that, Bobby doesn't really get enough credit for his guitar skills. And that, they were pointing out some of the songs like China Cat, where he actually steps up and really fills some of the major roles. But I agree with your last statement, Jim, that if he were not there, he would be missed just as much as Jerry is missed right now. That, the little things he fills in wouldn't be there. He's a little frustrating for me sometimes. I'm not a big fan of the Bobby of the wide open spaces and, blue skies and the cowboy songs, but God bless him for doing what he wants to do. He doesn't need my permission, and he's clearly got the talent, and at this stage of his life, it looks like he's having a lot of fun.
Yeah. Now, I myself really like the Cowboy song, and as does Bob. I love a Jack Straw, and I'm really happy with the Blue Mountain CD that came out about a year ago.
Mm-hmm.
I love all those old Cowboy songs, and I think a set doesn't go by without at least one, Me and My Uncle.
Yeah, I wasn't talking about those. I was talking more about the new album that he did. And again, it's not a dislike as much as it's just, and quite frankly, I think it shows him growing and expanding as a musician at the next level. And, somebody was asking me, where do we think, where would Jerry be had he still been alive 20 years down the road? What would he be playing? What would he be doing? And you know what? It's a great question, but I can tell you this. I never go to a show where Bobby's playing and not have a good time.
Yeah, and he does screw up the lyrics pretty good, too.
But that's why.
Listen carefully to the Folsom show. Oh, what was the song that I'm thinking that he kind of was muffled and muffling up the lyrics in Morning Dew at the Folsom show. But we all love him, and he's great, and he's kept this thing going at age 70 when he certainly doesn't have to do it. Phil doesn't have to do it. They're all multi-millionaires. On one of these shows, we should talk about how the electronic music and the royalties is working in this day and age, and how vast sums of money are piling up for artists because of every time one of their songs is played anywhere in the world, they get a few pennies, which adds up to millions and millions of dollars.
That's true, too. So here's two interesting things about Bobby and the Cowboy songs. Number one, at the shows at Wrigley Field, in the second set, they were playing Mama Tried. They played it all the way through, and then when it ended, it kind of ended disjointedly. And it wasn't quite sure where they were going or what they were going to do, so they stopped playing for a minute, and then they talked about it. And then all of a sudden, they came back up, and they went back into the last verse of Mama Tried, and they played it through so that Bobby could end it the way he wanted and roll it into Love Light. And I got to tell you, what kind of a musician who's been playing for 30 years, is almost like having a rehearsal on stage. It was wonderful. The crowd loved it and ate it up. And, he wasn't satisfied, so he went back and he took it the direction that he wanted. And here's an interesting statistic for you to think about. That the number one all-time song played by the Grateful Dead over their 30 years, by a lot, is Me and My Uncle. They played that song more than any other song, and by 100 shows. So,
Yeah, I've always had a lyrical question about that song. In the end, does he kill his uncle for the gold, or do the other cowboys kill the uncle?
I think it's him.
Yes, it's not really clear, and I've studied those lyrics in the Grateful Dead songbook, and it's not even clear when you read the lyrics.
No, it's not, but, that's half the fun.
But anyway, yeah. So
that's all good,
yeah,
too.
I have two good friends of mine are an uncle and a nephew, but by a twist of fate, they're only a few years apart in age. So whenever we sing that song together, the uncle always says, I really don't like the ending.
I bet. That's right. You got to watch out for that when you're doing that. Well, listen, I know we're almost out of time, but I just, have to let you know I'm reliving a little bit of my youth. I'm in the car with my wife and two of my kids, and we're heading up to Alpine Valley in East Troy, Wisconsin, a spot where I saw the Dead more times than I could count. And we're heading up there because Phish is starting a 3-day run tonight. So, the family that goes to Phish together always has a good time. So we're heading up there to see it, and by this time next week, we'll have more good Phish stories to tell.
Yes, we're really looking forward to Phish here in Colorado. Yeah, Alpine Valley is kind of like the Red Rocks of the Midwest. I've never been there, but I've heard many good things about it.
It's a beautiful place, and they transitioned up there in the mid-1980s and played there all the way almost until 1988. And they just pull in up there and play 3-4 shows every summer. And you're in the middle of cornfields up in Wisconsin, and there's this lovely place that in the winter kind of doubles as a ski hill. Not much to ski down for the folks who are used to real skiing out west, but for people in the Midwest, it's not too bad. But it's got a lot of history, this place. There's been some great shows there in 2002 when the Dead came back and did their Terrapin family reunion. They did it at Alpine Valley. And on a beautiful day when the weather is nice like today, it's really wonderful. You could be up on the grass on the beautiful hill they have. You can be down in the pavilion. You can be anywhere. And the sound is great. The crowd is a lot of fun. And we're looking forward to it.
Yeah. Well, does Alpine Valley have on-site camping?
You know, that's funny. We were talking about that because my son and his group were looking for a place to camp, and all the campsites nearby were sold out. But after, a little perseverance, they finally did locate a place. But no, you can no longer camp on the Alpine Valley grounds. However, when we were seeing the Dead there in the mid-'80s, you could camp. People camped all over the Alpine Valley grounds. Literally, there were tents set up about 25 feet away from the entrance into the show area. So somewhere along the way, they decided to stop it. A little-known fact, there's also a lodge. Alpine Valley has a lodge that probably has about 20 rooms. And so I've got some buddies of mine who had enough foresight to go and grab some rooms up there, so you pull in for the weekend and you never leave till Sunday night.
That'd be great. I imagine those rooms sell out pretty quick, probably a year in advance.
Right. You have to be willing to kind of guess when you think they're going to be there and take a chance on locking up the room.
Right. So, we're looking forward to our 3 Phish shows here in Denver at Dick's Sporting Goods, and there is on-site camping at Dick's.
Yep. I know you've told me about that.
That's a very interesting story. How
is that right? Don't you go in there every year with a camper and camp there?
Yeah, we take our RV and we pull in on Friday and we leave on Labor Day, Monday morning. And, we're hooting and hollering all night long.
That's fun.
It's so fun because you come out of the show at 11:30 or midnight and you have a few short steps to your RV and you're cracking a cold can of beer and ready to stay up until the sun comes up.
That's awesome.
It was funny. My 21-year-old son, Jack, last year goes, one of my goals, Dad, this year is, he plays guitar and he brings his folk guitar. Mm-hmm. I want to stay up until the sun comes up playing music. And we actually managed to accomplish that goal.
That's a wonderful goal. That's a nice thing.
I heard Phish is playing really, really good, pure psychedelic bliss.
Yeah, well, I'm excited. My older son is joining us. He just saw them in Boston a couple of nights at Fenway. And it's funny because they had a similar event out there one night where they had a rain issue and they wound up just playing one long set.
Yeah, it's been quite a summer, and it seems like we can't get a show in without a rain or without that cold rain and hail.
Right, well, we're hoping it's going to hold off tonight. But, it should be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to it, and we'll certainly have a lot to talk about next week, both in terms of talking about this show that's coming up, other things you have to add, and then, of course, we always have more good Grateful Dead stuff that we have never enough time to catch up on everything we want to talk about.
Very good. Well, enjoy the show, and we'll catch up with everybody next week. And to all our audience, there's ways to review these podcasts online. Next week, I'll have more detailed instructions on that. But if you can, go online and review these podcasts for us. It will help us keep these shows going. Thank you all very much.
Everybody have a nice week. See you next week. Thank you.